Hi, 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 and hey, hey, Beatle fans, and welcome to Talk More Talk, a solo Beatles videocast. This is a bi-weekly show that we do right here on Facebook, and it's all about the solo careers of the Beatles. As I always say, the most successful solo careers of any artist coming from a previous band, something that we celebrate right here on this very show. I'm Ken Michaels. I'm also known for a syndicated Beatles radio program called Every Little Thing, currently on 37 radio stations. And you might also know me for another podcast show that I do called Things We Said Today. And I'm being joined by my regular co-hosts on the show. First of all, we have the queen of Beatles media, wearing her crown right now. You also know her for being the author of Songs You Were Singing, Guided Tours Through the Beatles' Lesser-Known Tracks, also the book Michael Jackson FAQ. She's also authored many articles on the Beatles' deep tracks, and she goes deep into Beatles songs and solo Beatles songs, and that's certainly her forte, and we welcome her again to our show. Good to see you, Kid O'Toole.
Hello, my subjects. Hello. And this is
bow.
Yeah, that's right. And this is Tom requested this. so this is for you, Tom.
Thank you.
Looks good on you. Looks good on you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
As you mentioned, Tom, one of our other co-hosts is Tom Hunyadi, who you know for the solo Paul McCartney podcast called Two Legs that he hosts with David Gargalino. Welcome, Tom.
Welcome, everybody. Kit, and the lipstick looks amazing, too. Make sure you don't leave any lipstick traces anywhere or anything.
Oh, that's
I'm not doing that album.
No.
That's very good, Tom. The only song where that works. And
Yes.
you nailed it right there. And we've also got subbing for Ken Womack. Mean Mr. Mayo, we call him Joe on the show. Best known. You can call him Joe. You can call him
Mayo.
You call him Mayo?
Yes, Joe Mayo, who has a very popular YouTube site. He's been doing this for years now, very popular. And he's been bringing a lot. I don't know, it's going to cost you a little bit more than that.
Yeah, you're there. I know you were there. I can't see you.
So welcome, Joe.
Thank you, Ken, and hello, Kit. Hello, Tom. Great to be back as always, and I'm looking forward to this topic today.
All right.
Yeah, this was an idea that came to us from Kit, and it's actually we're going to be reviewing an album that came out in 1977. A much maligned album called Ringo the Fourth. And we'll be talking about that a little bit later on. And I know Kit will have a major announcement to share with us about some of the people here at Talk More Talk. And we'll do that after the news. So it's going to be a pretty full show here. But first, as usual, we will get to the latest in Beatle news. And I'm sure by now you've heard the biggest news of the last 2 weeks for Beatle fans. And that concerns Paul McCartney, who for the past year has been writing a new musical. It's a stage version of the 1946 classic Frank Capra film, It's a Wonderful Life. And he'll be writing the music for this and co-collaborating on the lyrics with screenwriter and playwright Lee Hall. And Lee is also the screenwriter behind Billy Elliot and Rocket Man. And theater and film impresario Bill Kenwright is producing the show. Paul said in a press release, like many of these things, this all started with an email. Bill had asked if it was something I might be up for. Writing a musical is not something that had ever really appealed to me. But Bill and I met up with Lee Hall and had a chat, and I found myself thinking, this could be interesting and fun. It's a Wonderful Life is a universal story we can all relate to. And Paul has nearly finished all the songs for the musical. And both the New York Post and Variety are both saying that it's likely to debut in the UK in late 2020 before coming to Broadway. So what are your thoughts about this news about Paul writing a musical?
Amazing. something different for Paul. All right, this is really the first, isn't it? Musical by Paul,
Well,
and he's done everything else. I think it's incredible.
well, you know,
Very
a
happy.
lot of the stuff that he's written through the years, especially a lot of the dance hall numbers, could have worked in musicals. You know, the thing that
Yeah.
surprises me about this announcement is that I always remember Paul talking about how he and John went to see Oklahoma in the movie theater, and they thought it was so corny, as if they would never consider doing anything at all like that. I can't believe Paul would actually think that way, considering how versatile he is as a
Right.
songwriter and how he's embraced so many different musical styles. So my question is, what took so long? I mean, I would have expected him to have done this many years ago, but I'm
Yeah.
thrilled about this.
Yeah. I'm up
Same
in the
thing
air
with the
about it.
standards out.
Yeah.
Long time. I'm happy about it. And
Mhm.
I remember him telling stories about how even the best musicals, John would be like, bloody hell. And John would walk out of even the best musicals, Paul
Right.
had said on a TV show. So this is interesting. It's something to look forward to. And it's a classic film, too.
Right. But even, you know, for corny music, Paul likes corny music. I mean, for someone that also said that how much he liked Fred Astaire, for example, Cheek to Cheek, that kind of music. I mean, it just seemed like this would be a natural thing for him to have done all these many years. So, my
I think
personal opinion.
Yeah, I think the subject matter of the film, I think, suits him as well too. You know, in a way that the ending is, you know, it's positive, it's uplifting, it's very moving and emotional, just like a lot of his songs are. So, you know, I'm curious about this too. I mean, I feel it could go either way, maybe. I mean, it could be a hit or miss. I mean, I'm looking forward to hearing what he has to offer. From what I've heard is early reports have that it's kind of Beatley. So I'm kind of curious about that. I watched a interview with his manager Scott Roger not too long ago that was recorded in January, and he had mentioned that he was already working on it back then. So I can see, that the music probably is close to being done. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he has to offer. Absolutely, yeah. Like you said, Joe, this is something new territory, and he's done everything else, so why not?
That's
Right.
great.
Yeah.
It'll be. I'm kind of like you, Tom. You know, it could go either way. I'll be very interested to hear what he does, because, you know, writing, you know, pop, rock, you know, everything he's done, and writing for a musical are very different things. And, you know, there have been some people that have been able to make that transition very well, and others not so much. I mean, like Paul Simon's The Cape Man. I mean, that didn't work out. You know, so U2 doing the music for the
Spider-Man.
Spider-Man musical, but there were other things going on that doomed that production. But the music, you know, I think that it's you know, you have to propel a story, you know, with the music. And but on the other hand, Paul has told some stories in his music, and he likes to write about different characters. I mean, you know, something like Eleanor Rigby, or Another Day, or something like that. I mean, you know, you could go on and on. So I think that's what and I'm sure he would have to keep in mind. It's just it's a different skill, but I'll be very interested to see how this goes.
Well, he'll be working with Lee Hall,
Right?
who'll be doing the playwright, so they're working on the lyrics together. So I think that'll be an added plus
True.
to Paul.
Yeah.
All right. Other news, something causing a lot of buzz in the past week is the word that Paul said that he's planning to release an album of him and his band of improvised outtakes from sound checks, which Paul has called a treasure trove of material that they've continued to record over the years. Now, does this mean it's really going to happen? Paul can actually be putting the word out there just to see what kind of interest there is in this kind of thing, but there's no official word yet about it.
No.
I'll put this in the category. I'll believe it when I see it. It is interesting, but I mean, I think this will be something only for hardcore McCartney fans, though. I don't see this for a casual McCartney fan.
Sure.
So we'll see.
Well, you know, the Amoeba gig has been getting real raves from a lot of people, fans.
Yeah.
A lot of people are putting this either their favorite live thing that Paul's ever done, or at least right behind Wings Over America, and across the board. I mean, I have yet to hear anybody in the circles of fans and people that Beatle people who weren't blown away by it. So maybe give Paul even more incentive if he knows it's being appreciated.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. McCartney's hot right now. I mean, he could put out just about anything, and people will flock to it. I mean, especially if he does multiple versions, color vinyl. I think if it's a collectible, yeah, suitcase. Yeah. But anyways, I mean, we're still talking McCartney after all, after this incredible 7-8 months that he's had now. I mean, going on a year since Egypt Station, the guy is hotter than ever right now. I mean, when was the last time we've talked about McCartney this much? In the past 20 years. I mean, this is just really, a hot time for him. So,
well, he knows how to create interest in himself.
Yeah.
And one thing that I think is kind of obvious, at least to me, is that it's been 10 years since Good Evening New York City.
Mm-hmm.
He hasn't put out any new live album. I mean, aside from Amoeba's gig, but anything from the last 10 years. And he's accumulated a lot of songs that he's done live that have never come out as live recordings since then, especially a lot of Beatles songs. Mm-hmm. So, but this whole thing about outtakes, that could be interesting.
Yeah.
It kind of reminds me of what he added to Tripping Alive Fantastic. A lot of what he called trinkets.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So a whole album of that could be interesting.
The soundtracks would be great too. I mean, the soundtrack idea is something interesting. He does a lot of different songs and soundchecks. I mean, I was at a soundcheck in 2017. He did Alligator from New.
Oh.
Which was a treat,
Right.
Stuff like that. Maybe he wouldn't do actually at the show, but he does it in the soundcheck.
Yeah. And when I hear that, I keep saying, why doesn't he do it on stage during the concert? Same thing with Celebration, which is a beautiful piece from Standing Stone, which he's done a lot during sound checks. And I wish he would do that as part of his live show. That would be a nice little thing to have. Okay, more Paul news. There's plenty of it.
Tireless man.
Paul happened to be at LIPA, the Liverpool Institute for Performing Arts, attending, as he does every year, their graduation ceremonies. The stars from Blackadder, Rowan Atkinson and Stephen Fry, were honored by being named Companions of the Liverpool Institute for Performing Arts, which honors outstanding achievement and practical contribution to the higher education institution. It's also been reported, though not confirmed, that he visited the Philharmonic Pub again, which is where he did that show with the James Corden feature with the karaoke. Also, Jeff Lynne's ELO tour with Danny Harrison, opening for him, ends this Thursday, August 1st, with a date at the PPG Paints Arena in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Danny Harrison's new song, called Motorways Erase It, is now available on streaming services, and he's been performing this song on tour with Jeff Lynne's ELO. And just debuting online is a new video for the song, which is directed by Liam Lynch. And it has a pig flying through the area, visiting various places with a Frisbee in his mouth.
It's
That's
trippy.
the video. It's what?
It's trippy.
Yes, it is. And as Jeff Lynne's tour ends, Ringo's tour gets underway with his all-star band celebrating their 30th anniversary. And that also starts on August the 1st. The same day Jeff Lynne's tour ends, Ringo's begins, and that'll be in Windsor, Canada, wrapping up on September the 1st at the Greek Theater in LA. I know I'll be seeing 2 of those shows.
Cool.
And some sad news on the passing of Ian Ferguson, who was Badfinger's roadie for many years. He also worked for Ritchie Blackmore and Deep Purple after working for Badfinger. And I did see a photograph of Joey Molland with him in the hospital a few weeks before he passed. All right, that's all the news I have for now. Anybody want to add anything? I think you had something, Tom.
Yeah, I just said one thing. Now that Paul's tour is over with, like all of his tours, once they end, if you go to paulmccartney.com, all of his tour merchandise is discounted. I think it's about $10 to $15 cheaper than it was on tour. So if you went to the show, or if you didn't go to the show and you want something to remind you of this tour, it's now on his website for a discount price.
Oh, thank you, Tom. I am after the show. I'm going to go right over there. There were some T-shirts from that tour that I really liked.
There
So
was so many of those T-shirts. I mean, there had to have been at least 24 T-shirts. It was crazy how many T-shirts he had on sale for his show.
oh, funny.
I'd love to have all of them, but I think they're like $40 a pop or something like that.
Well, yeah, they were 45 actually, and then now they're down to like $31 to $35 a pop now. So they're at discount price. So.
Nice.
Okay. All right. So before we continue, I know, Kit, you've got a major announcement to make.
Yes, indeed. Well, as everybody knows, and many of you watching right now or listening to this it may be going, the Fest for Beatles fans is coming up. It's August 9th through the 11th. And I've had a couple of people asking me, is Talk More Talk going to be doing something there? Yes. Now, unfortunately, we all can't be there. I wish we could, because, we had a great time when we were doing that panel at Monmouth, and it was really great. So hopefully we can all get our travel, schedules coordinated in the future. But Ken Womack and I will be at the fest, and we are very excited to announce that we will be interviewing Mark Lewison.
Yeah.
And I was so glad. I mean, we weren't sure if he'd be able to do it. I mean, he's a very busy man, as we all know, and but he graciously agreed to do it, and so. That's what we're going to do. We're going to, of course, record it. We can't stream it live because the Wi-Fi connection at the hotel is, So we're going to do what we've done before when we've done live stuff, which is we'll record it, and then it will be put up for our next show. So you don't want to miss this. It's going to be a great conversation. So all you have to do is go over to thefest.com. If you don't have your tickets already, go get them, and then you can be a part of the next Talk More Talk and be in the audience and help us welcome Mark.
Okay.
That's great. I can't wait to see it.
Yep, me too.
Which day is that going to be on the weekend?
I believe it's going. I mean, the full schedule will go up August 2nd, but I believe it's going to be Saturday.
Okay.
Yep. So yes, like Saturday afternoon. So of course, keep looking at it. Checking out our Facebook page, our Twitter, and we'll post all the details so you'll know when to be there.
Very cool. You always learn something new whenever Mark Lewison's in the room.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. He's one of the best people you could ever interview. The knowledge that man has is astounding.
Yep.
And then the memory to remember, it's all that stuff.
Yep.
Wow. Just incredible.
Yeah.
Okay, so before we get to our main topic of Ringo the Fourth, we want to talk about something that was just reissued, and that's the Mike McCartney album known as McGear, which came out in 1974. I have just digital downloads of it. I don't have the physical copy, but there's Tom showing the front cover, and there's Kit showing the CD. So I think this was a tremendous album, and personally, I think it just gets better over time. And I think a lot of people may not have explored it fully when it first came out. And obviously, it's got Paul all over it.
Yeah.
Having produced the album and co-writing many songs with Mike and writing in its entirety some of the songs. And Paul, you can feel his presence throughout the whole album. And it is, as many people have said, like a Lost Wings album, because you also have Linda McCartney on there, Denny Lane is on there. It was the start of Jimmy McCulloch working with Paul. This all happened before Junior's Farm. And
one song with the next Wings drummer.
That was the first Wings drummer.
Yeah, that was
Yeah. He was on Leave It.
Yeah, exactly. So
a
lot of Wings on there.
Yep. So what do you guys think, for those of you that have heard it? Joe, you said you haven't heard it yet?
No, I haven't heard it, and I've been hearing all these great things that you've just said, like the Lost Wings album. Paul is featured everywhere on it. Linda, I mean, it's something I definitely have to check out. I mean, I'm convinced,
Hmm.
but I haven't heard it. I haven't heard it yet.
Okay, you, Tom?
Yeah, this was an album that I really didn't care for. First time I heard it some years back, didn't see what all the what McCartney fans liked about this album. But as I listened to it and gave it more chances, I'm really appreciating this more now, and especially since this remaster. I have an old vinyl copy that was kind of beat up, so the sound quality wasn't really that great. But man, what a great job with this remaster! It sounds perfect, and it sounds like it was just recorded yesterday. It's really a wonderful remaster. The voice comes out crystal clear, and all the instrumentation is right out in front of you, and just a great sounding record. Really good.
Yeah, I've actually spent all my time listening to the bonus CD.
Yeah, that's a lot of
tracks.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I haven't heard the remaster yet, but I've been listening to the bonus tracks. But there's a
Yeah.
lot of worthwhile stuff on there. For anyone that doesn't know, there's a lot of songs that Mike released as singles in 1973. There's a couple songs that were actually recorded at Apple Studios.
Right.
And even there's a song, All the Whales in the Ocean, which was a song in 1980, which is really nice.
Right.
Some really good stuff there, as well as different versions of songs from the McGear album. There's an extended version of Leave It.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And like you said, those bonus tracks, I mean, he's a really good singer. I mean, those bonus tracks are some really nice singing on them. I was kind of surprised. I mean, because I don't really care for all of the singing that he does on the McGear album, but I was really impressed with those bonus tracks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I wanted to comment here. I'm showing a comment on screen here from a loyal viewer, Richard, who said, "I just bought on vinyl. I don't get it, to be honest." That was my initial reaction to it when I listened to it. I mean, it's very quirky. It's a quirky album. It's a kind of an eccentric album, but that gives it its charm. I thought, I agree with you, Tom. The remastering on this was really, really stellar. I mean, it does. It sounds like it could have been recorded today. It's nice job on that. Yeah, I mean, the songs are definitely quirky. I did like Giving Grease a Ride. I thought that was a
great track.
lot of fun.
Yeah.
What Do We Really Know kind of grew on me. I didn't like it initially. There's some very interesting things. Joe, when you listen to it, I'll be really curious to hear what you think. You have to kind of listen to it with an open mind.
I'm hearing that two of you weren't sold right away, so
yeah,
I'll keep that in mind when I listen to it. And is this a? I have to admit it. Some people who watch my channel know. If I was to tell you that I have a copy of this there for about a year, but just never got it on yet, would you hold it against me?
It looks like you got a lot to listen to back there. So
yeah. And this apartment is not really conducive to that, really.
Right.
I do better with CDs in the car.
Yeah.
But that guitar work on that song, What Do We Really Know? I mean, is great. Jimmy's guitar work throughout the album is really stellar. And then the song Leave It, I'm loving it more and more. Every time I play it, I really didn't care for the whole saxophone bit on there at the first couple times that I've listened to it, but I'm really starting to appreciate now. And correct me if I'm wrong, Ken, but this, I think, was one of the better showings of a McCartney song that he gave away on the charts. I think this went to number 36 in the UK, and I think this is one of the higher chart songs that he's given away.
I think you're right, although here in America it didn't really do anything.
Right, but in the UK it did. But between the UK and the US, I think this is one of the better outings that he gave away that charted well.
Yeah, well, Leave It, to me, as soon as you hear it, you immediately think it's a McCartney song. It sounds like, his kind of melody, his kind of hooks. It's got Paul written all over it. And I actually like the horns on it, despite one of our listeners just now, Tom Brennan, who didn't put the horns on it. I think it really worked.
I love horns.
Me too.
Oh, it's good.
Kit, you're right in using the word quirky because there's so many different styles of music on here. And
Yes.
sometimes when Paul works with different people, it gives him the chance to do things that might be a little bit out of character of what you would expect. What do we really know is a perfect example of that. There's no other song in Paul's catalog that sounds
Right.
anything like that.
Hmm.
There's even a moment in there that's kind of gospel-y
Right.
in the song. And you know, this the Man Who Found God on the Moon is an amazing,
Yeah.
an amazing song. And towards the end of it, you hear Paul screaming in the background, and you just love it. You know, there's so many good things to say about this album, and I think for those that aren't familiar with Mike, he started off his career in a group called The Scaffold, which really combined comedy with poetry and pop songs. He has a very comedic, very I don't know, funny. He has a sense of humor that he applies in his lyrics, and a song like Norton is the perfect example of that, which has this kind of a marching feel to it. But if you listen to the lyrics, there's a lot of things on this album that are kind of funny and humorous, and that's Mike's contribution going along with Paul. I'd like to know, you know, when they wrote these songs together, did they write from scratch? Was it mainly Paul's song, or did Mike hand them lyrics? You know, that's what I'm most curious about. But to work together like this, it started off just being a single for Leave It. I don't know how that evolved into a full album.
Well, it's in the book where he talks about how Paul gave the song "Leave It" to the Eastmans, the lawyers, and just to see what they thought of it and what they could do with it. And they were the ones that recommend that they turn it into an album. Keep going. You know, this is a really good song. Make an album out of it. The question I had for you, Ken, was you had interviewed Denny Sywell numerous times, and have you ever asked him about his involvement on this album?
No. But the next time I do, I'll make sure that I bring this up. You know, there's so many things you could talk about with Denny Sywell.
Right.
And, you know, I said this on my other show that even though like the fourth and fifth members of Wings were there for about 3 years apiece, 3 to 4 years, Paul did so much in that span of time that, you know, you've got hours and hours you can talk about with each of them, really, between the albums and the tours and everything else and all the side projects. So, yeah, but I'll make sure the next time I talk to Danny, I'll bring that up, although he was only on the one song.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But he had already left Wings by then, by the time of this recording. So I was curious to see how he came to, you know, work on this record.
Yeah. Well, I'll bring that up.
And that's the other thing. Mike McCartney definitely was lucky that he had a pretty good backing band, didn't he?
Right. And it's funny because in the interview and in the book, he refers to Paul as our kid for some reason. Don't understand why he's referring to him in the interview and in the booklet as our kid. But the interview on the DVD is an hour long, so you get a lot of information on that. They do have the promotional video for Leave It, which it's a fun video. You know, it's him and a half-naked girl running around in the woods. So, I mean, you know, what guy would like that? But,
I can't wait.
It's great. Yeah. But yeah, like you said earlier, Ken, those bonus songs are really cool. Really good stuff.
Absolutely. Aren't there 2 interviews with Mike on the DVD?
Yeah, there's 2 interviews. I only watched the one. I think there's one at Lipa, and then there's a one where it's like 66 minutes long, and he just really goes. You know, it's pretty much his career in show business. It really covers everything from his time with Schofield and you know Mike and Magoo, if that's how you pronounce Magoo, Magoo, yeah, and then the whole making of that album. So it's a nice interview.
Okay, very good. So let's get on with our main topic for the show tonight, and that is for. Why is this funny, Tom?
What are you laughing at?
I just can't wait to see what everybody's got to say about it. That's all.
Me too.
Me too.
We're here to talk about an album that came out in 1977 from Ringo called Ringo the Fourth. This was his follow-up album from Ringo's Rotogravure the previous year. Arif Mardin produced both those albums, by the way. released on Atlantic Records here in the States, on Polydor in the UK. And as I said before, it's a much maligned album. Depending upon what books you read or what sources you research, there are some that will say that this is possibly the worst, not only Ringo album, but worst solo Beatles album.
Right,
Do
not
you
including the experimental stuff.
Right. So you can't talk about the early John and Yoko albums.
Yeah,
I wouldn't even
Sound.
include like the first two Fireman albums because
Right.
that's just so different, you know. Or Electronic Sound, I think you said. So do you think that this album deserves this kind of reputation? How do you feel about the album now? And you know, and there's also the talk. I'll bring this up right here about this being a disco album, which I think is a bit of a joke because the first song on the album, which was the first single, "Drowning in the Sea of Love," is a disco version of the Joe Simon R&B classic. There isn't too much on the album outside of that. There's maybe you call it disco light, something like Simple Love Song. The B-side to the singles for "Drowning in the Sea of Love" and "Wings," which was the second single, is a song called "Just a Dream," which I actually think is a really strong song. And that's kind of danceable. But most of the album is not. So every time that I keep hearing this is a disco album, I think it's a joke to call it that. There's some touches of it, especially on "Drowning in the Sea of Love," but I wouldn't call it that. But anyway, Kit, let's start with you.
Okay, and first of all, we were talking about this just before the show, and I just wanted to mention it again that you know, when we talk about is it disco and everything, you know, I've got nothing against disco, and I think all of us feel the same way. I mean,
Right.
yeah, I have nothing against it. I mean, you know, sure, there was some bad disco in the 70s, but there's bad everything, you know. And so I never bought into the disco sucks crap and all that. I really don't like it. So when we talk about is this a disco album, that's not putting it down, you
Right.
know. It really is. So
Hey,
so just to clarify that.
okay. You're
you
getting
know-
a virtual hug from me
Okay. Right
for
back at
saying that.
All right. I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid.
Okay.
You know, it's, to me, the album is a bit of a time capsule. You know, not only musically in terms of that there's disco, maybe disco influenced songs is the way to say it. They're not, you know, it's not the Bee Gees. I mean, it's, you know, it's not Saturday Night Fever. But you know, it's also a snapshot of Ringo during this time. I mean, this is Ringo in kind of a, you know, party. He's, you know, he kind of comes off on this album. He's, you know, partying. He's kind of a playboy, hitting the clubs. I mean, you know, and that kind of hitting the clubs and everything was a bit of his life at the time. I mean, in the late 70s in LA, you know, I mean, he was, you know, as we all know, partying. And so, you know, to me, this album reflects that in a way, in terms of its sound and its subject matter, and even the cover. You know, I mean, it's just as I said, it's like a time capsule for me. And we'll get into all the specifics in a minute. But just overall, is this one of his best? No, for sure. It's there are some things on here that I kind of wondered why in the world would Martin have included it. I just can't understand. But some of the other tracks, you know, like "Drowning in the Sea of Love," I thought that was a great cover. I mean, you know, and Martin really, I think, produced it pretty well. I mean, I think, you know, on many of the tracks, not all, you know, kind of created sort of a cushion for Ringo's voice with the arrangements, and also I thought actually it was well produced. But yes, uneven, to say the least.
Okay. Well, I'm sure we'll get back to that thought later on. Let's go with you, Joe.
Oh, okay, Ken. A lot of what Kit said, I would agree with. The disco thing, my feeling of it is, well, I wasn't wild about disco at the time, I guess. I've come to like it a lot, especially in my opinion with the crap we have today. Disco is great, just that stuff. I like disco now. But the thing is, I think besides the danceability, it's a dancing album. No, it's not disco in the sense of that. You're not going to dance along with it. It's not Casey and the Sunshine Band or something like that. But I think, you have the female singers in the back with their ooh. You got Melissa Manchester among them, and
Right.
Bette Midler, I think, is on a couple of tracks. That whole feeling to me, and like Kit said, the time capsule. That's what I feel. It's like we have something here from '77, the disco era, really right at the heart of it. Beatle-wise, it's pushing it a little bit. It's disco light, like you said. But what else do we have aside from maybe Good Night Tonight, Daytime, Nighttime Suffering, maybe? Yeah, I like that there's something to kind of take care of that period. We have something disco-y from Ringo. And my feeling is I actually have grown to like, because, I didn't love it when I first heard it. I like half the songs. I can find 5, maybe 6 songs that I really like here. I'm with Kit. Is it his best album? No, it's not his best album. I would put it near the bottom of the if we're ranking from top tier, middle tier, bottom tier. But I have at least one album that I personally like less than this album, which I would contend Ringo's worst album. And
Shall we? Yeah.
not many fans agree, but some do. Is split. Old Wave. I'm not big on Old Wave. What I mean by that is I enjoy actually more songs off Ringo the Fourth than I do off of Old Wave. Drowning in the Sea of Love, I've been mentioning that. I love that. The fact that Ringo sings these, it's not his best singing on most tracks, I wouldn't say, but I think that works to an advantage in a song like Drowning in the Sea of Love. It's about somebody, like Kit mentioned, the period where Ringo is boozing a lot. This is, he's been sober now for over 30 years, but back then he was partying all the time and drinking a lot and indulging. And it sounds like a guy that's kind of like, shouting the song, and he's had a few too many. And the promo film video, if you like, that goes with this really, I think, accompanies that feeling. It really works for the song. I love that promo film, that video. I just think it really encapsulates the whole feel of it, his voice and everything. If Ringo was at his best game, singing it at his best when he can, maybe I wouldn't enjoy the song as much. I kind of think it suits the song, that one. And there's a whole bunch of other tracks. If you want to go through them, how you want to do it, I could single out tracks, or you can bring them up later. Stuff like Wings, for example. I love the song Wings. I think the song itself is one of my favorite Ringo solo songs of all that he wrote with Vinnie Poncia. But the thing is, I think the Ringo 2012 version. I think it was really enhanced.
I agree
on that.
There's a little more oomph to it, I think. Yeah. It's a little harder of a rocker.
Yeah. And I think you got Joe Walsh on guitar on the 2012 version, if I'm not mistaken. Somebody's playing good, nice guitar on there.
It's a lot more drumming. There's a lot more drumming from Ringo on there.
More drumming. It's a little slightly faster. Then you have like Tango All Night. Now that's an example of a song that has like a fun Latin feel to it.
Right.
I enjoy it. I'm listening to it in the car. My girlfriend also is like, I'd rather listen to this than anything today. Is it anything great? Nothing. I don't think any of the songs here are songs that I would call great songs, maybe even good songs, but they're enjoyable, all the same. Not among his best, but yet stuff that I have a good time with. There's a song, Gave It All Up.
Right.
Just to show that I'm trying to be even-handed here, and my criticism as well as some praise. I like the song, Gave It All Up. I think the lyrics are nice, but there's a time where I think Ringo's voice really sounds kind of shot. He sounds like he's really in the midst of a drunk in that one. To put it mildly, not too mildly, perhaps. I don't know. I just think his voice is poor on that. Can She Do It Like She Dances is a lot of fun. You know,
Yeah.
again, right from that period of Ringo having drinking and living it up in the bars and everything. Energetic, that song. I like the cover of "Sneaking Sally Through the Alley."
Yes.
Pretty funky.
I have a good time with that one. So I'm listed my songs here. You know, some are hit for me, some are miss. None are great, but I like it better than Old Wave. You know, I'd rather listen to this.
Oh, you got some people disagreeing with you, Joe.
I haven't been able to read it at the time.
Yep, these are we got a couple of Old Wave fans here, so that might be a future show.
I don't know what you're listening, what you're hearing. They can say the same about me.
Yeah.
I'll take She's About a Mover any day from Old Wave. Maybe In My Car, and maybe what's the other one? Hopeless.
Hopeless is great.
good.
Hopeless is excellent.
As Far As We Can Go is a great song from there. As Far As We Can Go.
It's a ballad. Yeah. The ballad. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't mean to. I'm bringing that album up now. I don't want to derail
Okay.
the show.
Yep. That'll be a future one.
Yeah.
Tom, let's hear your thoughts.
All right. Well, you know, to be as positive as possible. I mean, I know we say worst, but I don't like the worst. I like to say maybe least popular or least favorite. I mean, because there's got to be a least favorite. I mean, no matter how you look at it, unfortunately. But you got, Kit and Joe, you talked about his mid to late 70s, early 80s. There is a fine line between having a good time and just outright, addiction. And unfortunately, if you Google search images Ringo Starr in that period, I mean, he does not look like he's, a healthy person at that time. So, and I think unfortunately it reflects on this album for me, vocally, and a little bit on the written the songwriting on this album. Now, Vinny and Ringo, they've been writing since the Ringo album. I think that's when they started their partnership. And Oh My, I think is a great song, and you can tell that both parties are into it. And then the stuff that they did on Goodnight Vienna is good. I like the Ooh Wee, and Crying is a pretty good song as well. But I think the writing on this particular album is just okay. I don't think it's some of their best. And unfortunately, for me, this album suffers in the singing department. It just, I mean, if you got like you said, Joe, I mean, maybe that that drunkenness vocal on the first song, Drowning in the Sea of Love, works for that song, just like I think Paul's raw voice for Early Days works for that song. I'm glad he didn't go back and redo that, but but I think that's it. I think he sounds like he's suffering to get the vocals out while he's screaming during Can She Do It Like She Dances, even though that's my favorite song on the album. Excuse me. But however, production-wise, I mean, Kit, you said producing. I think it's a great producing job. I think talent-wise on this album, we got a well-known name in David Spinoza, who does some great work on this album. Joe, you had mentioned Bette Midler and Melissa Manchester. You can also throw in Luther Vandross.
Yeah.
On this album as well. Great backing singers. And Arif, is that how you pronounce his?
Arif, I think.
Arif, thank you. Yeah, I mean, he won 2 Grammys he won a Grammy with Melissa, and he won a Grammy with Bette Midler. So I mean, he's got talent. I mean, and it shows, production-wise on this album. So there's some really good stuff on this album. Like you said, Wings, I'm glad he redid that, because I just don't think it really has the oomph. If they would have done this on Ringo or on Goodnight Vienna, I think this song would have been great if he had, because he really he left that his mold or his theory production where he had all his friends coming up and helping him on those albums, on those first 3 regular Ringo albums. And I gotta tell you, and I give him credit for honing his writing skills and working more with the writing. I think that was a nice step for him in the right direction. I just don't think he was in the right place at this time to make a good album personally in his life. So, but I unfortunately do consider this my least favorite Ringo album, but it was good coming back to it and listening to it again because, you know, my mind might change like it does, you know, so many times, you know. So, but yeah, I mean, it's I'm sorry.
Can I say one thing before I forget? And
Yeah.
I did forget. With
Yeah.
Drowning in the Sea of Love, I have a friend of mine. You know, he loves the Beatles, and he's got the Sirius XM channel. And I'm always saying they don't play enough deep solo cuts there. And he keeps telling me these songs that come up, and he's like, you know, I like this song and that song, and there's a couple of Ringos he liked. And I said, what are they? He goes, oh, one of them was Drowning in the Sea of Love. Because I loved it. I said, really? I mean, I was impressed because of all songs. It wasn't like it was Oh My My or Snookeroo or something like that.
Right.
You know, and he also said Las Brias.
Las Brisas.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Which is another album. But I was impressed. What that has to do with anything? Just another point for Drowning in the Sea of Love, but it shocked me because I never would expect it. And he's like, then he has to see the video. He can't wait to see the video, and he's looking for it. So, hey,
And
Ringo.
Okay. Well, my opinion of the album, I got a lot. Well, actually, go ahead.
Just one more thing. One song that I've really come to love after listening to this album a couple times in the last 2 weeks is Gypsies in Flight. I think
I was going to mention that.
There's an excellent song, and I love the musicianship on that song. There's some great slide guitar. Is that what it is? Or it's just great guitar work throughout that song. And I think it's one of the better tracks on the album.
I like the way that part is sung. Gypsies. I'm not going to sing. The Gypsies in Flight part.
You might be able to do it better than him but anyways.
Well, and also, and I swear, Ken, we'll let you talk.
Keep going.
We still have time.
Yeah. But I just want to mention, you know, Tom, you were saying how you felt Ringo didn't really sound, you know, for lack of a better term, you know, into it in the track. And I think it's important to think about, you know, when he was recording this album, he, of course, before it recorded Ringo's Rotogravure, and, you know, it didn't do well. And so his record label, I think at the time, was saying to him, you know, look, we need a hit here. And of course, it's 1977. Height of the disco era. And so I think he was pressured into at least incorporating, you know, more contemporary kind of sounds, which, you know, I think that explains, you know, sometimes his lack of enthusiasm, and even something like It's No Secret, which I kind of like. But it's very like a soft rock, 70s soft rock sound. So I mean, you can tell he's, you know, like I could picture Nicolette Larson or somebody doing this. I mean, you know, he's
Ambrosia.
Really, right. I mean, he's trying to, and again, I'm not saying this to put him down, but I think that was part of it, that he was pressured into incorporating these, you know, contemporary sounds to have a hit, and you know, I don't think he was comfortable doing that on every song, to say the least.
You've all made some great points here. Where do I even start? Let me start by saying that I've always said that I would never consider any solo Beatle album, we're not talking about the experimental stuff, as we said before, to be a bad album. A bad album to me is an album where I don't like half or more of the songs. I would never say that about any solo Beatle album. On this particular album, there's only one song that I don't care for, and that's Out on the Streets, where I think Ringo's vocals are not all that great. I don't think it's that great a song, but I do think that he works very well with a disco record in Drowning in the Sea of Love. And I found that really interesting, what you said, Joe, about the fact that if his voice didn't sound that way, you know, that really helped the record. And you could say the same thing about Can She Do It Like She Dances, you know. But
I agree with the others, though.
I do think that this should be looked upon, actually, as a very significant album in Ringo's career, for the simple reason that out of the 10 songs on here, 6 songs he co-wrote. And up until that point, he never wrote that much. on any of his albums. The songs that he wrote with Vinnie Poncia from Ringo, Goodnight Vienna, and Rotogravure, there's like 2 or 3 songs apiece. This is 6 out of 10. Plus the B-side, Just a Dream, he co-wrote with Vinnie Poncia. So, and I happen to like all those songs, except, like I said, Out on the Street. Wings, I think, was a really solid tune. I really like the original a lot. I don't know if the newer version's better. It does have more oomph to it, like you said. I don't know, maybe it's a little bit edgier to me, the original I like. But I thought it was a really good song, solid song. Gave It All Up is
Excuse
actually
me for a
my...
minute. He's got a little bit. Excuse me for a minute. He's got a little, because I can't see you right now on the screen. He's got a little bit of a growl, and I like. You know, Ringo does that lion thing. At the strength of a lion. I love when he does that. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, but by the same token, there are times when he'll improvise at the end of the song, and it's funny and it works. Like at the end of Can She Do It Like She Dances, or Sneaking Sally Through the Alley. Where are you going in the alley with that Sally? You know, and it's funny, but it does work for those songs. Gave It All Up is one of my favorite solo Ringo songs, period. It's a beautiful melody. It's very melancholy. Mixing that with the harmonica in the song really works very well. Yeah. And like we've been talking about, this was party time for Ringo. This is a perfect song that a guy could sing in a bar, lifting up his mug, saying, I gave it all up for you, having trouble in his past life, whether it was school or his girlfriend or something. It's a perfect song for that. But like you said, Tom, not great vocals on Gave It All Up, but it's a great song. It really is. And the whole arrangement
I like the
of
song
it
better than the vocal. I like the song, yeah.
Right. Tango All Night, sometimes I think with that Latin feel, maybe a little bit of the No-No song. Makes me think of that a little bit. Very well arranged on that song. I like Can She Do It Like She Dances. Again, not a great vocal, but, you know, like you said, Joe, works with that kind of vocal, like he's been partying, coming right out of the bar. This is what I sound like. Sneaking Sally Through the Alley is really a very good cover of the song. I know that version better than the Robert Palmer one, which is the one that most people say is more the definitive version of that song.
I've never heard it.
Oh, guys, I'm sorry. The Robert Palmer. I mean, he's backed by the Meters. Come on. Okay. That is pure funk right there.
Yeah, you're in kids' territory right now, Ken. So
we can all differ in our opinions here, but I think the arrangement for Sneakin' Sally worked really well. You know, in most cases, when Ringo covers a song, you know, they've all been pretty good, except for Where Did Our Love Go, which was abysmal. But then the last 3 songs on the album are choice cuts. I really love It's No Secret. And you can call it soft rock, adult contemporary, but it's a beautiful song. I think it's like a lost gem from Ringo's catalog. Ringo has this knack for writing very simple melodies that work very well. And I wouldn't say that a lot of these songs are great songs, but they're memorable songs. And after several listens, they stick in your brain. And they're worthwhile to listen to. It's No Secret is one of those songs for me. Gypsies in Flight, back to back with that, 2 very soft songs, work together extremely well. Again, Ringo, he has his own style as a songwriter, regardless of who he writes with. You always know, like if you were presented with a song from you know, a different singer, and you were told one is a John Lennon song, one's a Paul McCartney song, one's a George Harrison song, one's a Ringo song, but it wasn't any of them singing it. You could tell from the song composition who would be the writer. And you could tell Ringo has his own style. It's simple, yet it's effective. And I do think Simple Love Song and Gypsies in Flight are really strong songs. And actually, the song that closed the album, Simple Love Song, I really would have voted for that as a single. I really thought that was a very catchy song. And the way that it starts at the very beginning with those strings and the pounding of, I guess it's piano, kind of reminds me a little bit of Philadelphia Freedom. A little bit, if you think about it. But again, a very simple melody. It's a simple love song, and it works.
Right.
Now, I think sometime in the future, what would be a great topic for us would be to discuss why, right after Goodnight Vienna, everything plummeted,
Hmm.
Yeah.
torpedoed for Ringo.
Right.
I mean, would you say that Ringo's Rotogravure is that much weaker than Goodnight Vienna? You know, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily. It's just a matter of opinion. But
Yeah.
why did that happen? I mean,
No,
Ringo
I
had
think that
that string of hits,
I think
but
Goodnight Vienna has some strong. I mean, arguably, subjectively, some stronger songs on it. Maybe. I mean, I like Ringo's. I'm coming to like Ringo's Rotogravure a lot more too. It's another one. This whole later '70s period, I'm beginning to enjoy more. Maybe
Right.
because I put it aside so much. But just to answer that question, not do a whole show on it. I was thinking, you got such strong. I mean, you have No No Song, you have Only You, you have Goodnight Vienna,
Snookeroo.
I mean, there's
Yes,
a lot
Snookeroo
of
is-
real,
yeah.
you know,
Ooh-wee.
really good songs on there. Not that I don't like some of the ones on Rotogravure, because I do. But this is a good time just to say something that I wanted to say is that, you know, maybe this is a cop-out. People have told me it is. But when I'm listening to Ringo, I always say, this is Ringo. I'm listening to a Ringo record, you know?
Right.
Mm.
And Ringo's the court jester, happy-go-lucky Ringo. We love Ringo. Hey, you know, light and fun and schmaltzy. So I have a different mindset when I listen to it. I can enjoy it as that because it's Ringo. You know what I mean? I wouldn't expect the same out of John or Paul or George. I'm not looking for the same thing. And there's, you know, some Ringo that I can enjoy just because it's him. Would I recommend this album to anybody, just a person out there? No way. I would say do not play this record.
Well,
But,
see, I kind of disagree with you a little bit there, Joe. I would never tell anybody not to listen to any of these records. I think it's up to, I mean, especially even if these, you know, before got a bad review from like a well-known critic, you know, or a writer, you know, I still say if you like Paul, if you like George, you like Ringo or John, listen to it and you make up your own mind whether or not you like it or not. I just don't think we as people that are, you know, do this or come on, you know, and talk about them should be the ones that say, hey, look, don't listen to it. No, I think people should listen to these songs and then make up their mind, you know, whether or not they like it or not.
It's just my way of saying, I think, you know, for you know, a Beatles fan, Ringo fan, I could understand. I mean, there's some Beatles fans that when somebody just, I think Dara just said, I'm way, way behind guys.
Right.
You know, some people don't even, I know Beatle fans that don't even count Ringo.
Right.
You know, it's just
Yeah,
sad.
that's too bad.
It's a crime. It's a crime.
Yeah. Now, I have a question from Richard. He's asked this a couple of times, so I want to get to this because it is an interesting question, which is a curious question. When was the last time before you guys had to prepare for this show that all of you had played this album? And yeah, I mean, and it does.
Last year. I
bought
it on
about a year
vinyl.
ago.
Yeah, I bought it on vinyl a year ago, and I listened to it about a year ago.
You got to realize, I do a show, Every Little Thing, where I play music from any of the decades of the Beatles group and solo. So at any given time, I could play a cut from here. So it's never far away.
And
these days, this is why, for me personally, with my YouTube channel, I mean, I actually did a review on this about, I want to say, a year or two ago. I'm revamping my reviews, so it's down now. It's not up anymore. But I'm going to be doing them all again. But I find these days, this is the kind of album in the catalog for me personally I'm looking to reach for. You know, I've heard Band on the Run, Imagine, you know, and the Beatles' whole catalog. I want to hear something a little more different that's not really ingrained into, you know, my brain so much.
Right.
So
that's why I think this was a good idea to go back and, you know, and check out this album. And, you know, does it deserve all the, you know, the criticism that it got, you know, at the beginning when it first came out and all throughout. I mean, I know when I first started, you know, becoming a Beatles fan and solo Beatles fan, I had a lot of older relatives and a lot of older people to say, hey, I mean, you don't need to listen to this album. You don't need to listen to that album. Just go with these albums. And throughout the years, as I was listening to the albums that I was told not to, I found myself really enjoying those albums. So, and that's why I say you should never tell anybody, you know, not to listen to it. At least give it a shot and come up with your, you know, your own opinion.
And actually, Tom, this is sort of saying playing off what you were saying, another one of our loyal viewers, Mark, said it's not an album I've given much time to, but after listening to you four, I'll definitely be giving it a closer listen. And I think that's it. 'Cause for me, it had been quite a while since I'd listened to this. This is just not one of those albums that I pull out a lot and listen to. It just isn't. So it was a great opportunity to listen to this because, as I said, you can listen to it as a time capsule. And yes, some of the songs have dated better than others, for sure. But it's an interesting period in his life and in his career, and I think it's interesting how we've talked about how, and it's true that on this album he wrote more songs on it. So while he was going through this difficult period in his personal life, in his professional life, he was, trying new things, which is, kind of interesting.
One of the joys for me in following the Beatles, especially in recent years, has been following what Ringo has been doing, and especially how he's grown as a songwriter, which so many fans completely overlook. I mean, ever since the album Vertical Man, which he worked on with Mark Hudson and the Roundheads, he has co-written almost every single song on his albums. And so many people are completely unaware of it. But if you follow the progress he made through the years, he only wrote a couple songs in the Beatles, Octopus Garden, Don't Pass Me By, then a few songs with George Harrison. Then he wrote, it's like more than a dozen songs with Vinnie Ponce in the 70s. Vinnie's very important in the story of Ringo Starr, as far as I'm concerned. Then on to Joe Walsh,
Sorry.
But to see the progress.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to do that, but it's hard because I sometimes say I don't see everybody's image. I like this question that Hector said, though. Could Ringo succeed in this era and top the charts? For me personally, I would want to say no, but I think country. I think he could do good on the country charts maybe now. I don't know about regular. If Paul wasn't able to do it, I don't know about Ringo.
No, but do you mean the singles charts or the albums charts? Because they're two completely different animals. If you're talking about top 40 singles, no top 40 station today is going to play a Ringo Starr song because of his age. They have a specific demographic that they're shooting for, which is why they don't play Paul McCartney's music. And, we can argue this point time and time again, and we will. There's so much stuff that they've done in recent years that if it was released in the 70s would have been hits. So it's really not the quality of the music. It's just that, radio is a different animal now. Radio used to be the primary way that people went and bought records. Now there's so many ways that you can discover music. I don't know if radio is as important as it used to be, but this has been the animal that radio has been for the longest time. Top 40 radio has always had a young demographic, and the people who program it, once an artist reaches a certain age or so, they start to phase those artists out. It happens with everybody. It's not just Paul and Ringo. It's every veteran artist out there. But one of the, I don't want to run this show too long. One of the things that I've noticed, especially in the wake of the success of Egypt Station debuting at #1, here you have a veteran artist who everyone has heard of. He's done this massive promotion, gotten very little airplay, certainly is not going to get played to a young demographic. He debuts at #1 because of everything that he's done in terms of the promotion, but then the album completely plummets. It just goes right up the charts. And the same thing just happened to Madonna, who hasn't been played on top 40 radio at all for quite a while. Whatever your thoughts are about Madonna, it's irrelevant. But, she debuted at #1 with her album, and then it dropped in the 70s the next week. So all the people who care about it go out and buy it initially. So that is success in a way because it still debuts at #1. But because of radio and the way they handle these artists, that's why they're not on the charts for that long.
Plus, you got the diehards that are going to get it that first week. And if there's 2 or 3 different versions, you can be sure that us diehards are going to probably get 1 or 2 of those different versions. So, and also I think one of the other problems too with this album was it's been out of print for a long time. I mean, not a lot of people remember that you can, go on YouTube and listen to it on YouTube. For the longest time, you can only find this on like a used record place. And if you had and that's how I got it was, I went to my local record store and I picked up a used copy.
Yeah.
So
And there were a lot of cutouts of this album, the cutout
right.
bits.
Mhm.
But it's interesting. We're talking about charting. I just wrote notes that on Billboard in the U.S. it made number 162 on the top 200. It didn't chart in England, but it's interesting when you think of like something, a really good album, really great album. I think Time Takes Time sadly didn't chart at all. How do you figure these things? Different times, different way they go through the charts.
Now I'll give you a virtual hug, Joe, because takes time. It's one of my favorite Ringo albums, and somebody else, and I apologize, it's way down the list, so I can't scroll down too far. But someone else said that too. That Time Takes Time is awesome. Should have been a much bigger hit.
I think he does a great job now. He's out there on Twitter. He's on Instagram. He's posting himself out there, making sure that people know he's still around. So I think that part's good. He's always posting a picture of him in the studio doing some songs or whatnot. So I think he's doing it right there. I just don't think there's enough people that unfortunately care, and hopefully we've shed a little light on this album, and people will go back and give it another spin.
A number of people in the comments have been saying that, so good.
When Ringo tours, he doesn't play new material all that much, if at all. So that also hurts the sales.
Yeah,
exactly. And then he pokes fun at it, saying, you're one of the 2 people that bought it. Which is sad, because he does put a lot of effort behind his albums, especially since Time Takes Time.
Right.
But just want to read one quick message here from Bernardo Arredondo. He says, Ringo the Fourth for me is a masterpiece because of the production, and Ringo writes a lot with Poncia. So nice to see very positive comments. I like what you were saying, Tom. We encourage everybody to think independently. Don't just read a review and agree with what the writer says. And you can listen to what we have to say. And, you can agree with us, you can disagree with us, but form your own opinion. As George would say, think for yourself.
I want to clarify that before, because that springboarded off something I said. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I always believe everybody should have their individual opinion. Don't go by a critic or all the fans unanimously think this, more or less. But I was just saying that I don't think I would say. Still, they may love it, but I wouldn't tell the guy I work with or something, you got to hear this Ringo the Fourth album. I don't think I would. Not for nothing, but even if people ask me on my channel all the time, I want to start with Ringo. What do you recommend? And I always say, well, other than the best of Ringo, I always say, Ringo, the self-titled album, and Time Takes Time. That's a good place to start. That's what I say. I wouldn't tell them listen to Ringo the Fourth first or something like that.
That's exactly what I thought. Yeah, I wouldn't tell a newbie to listen to that first. Yeah,
they can work their way up to that or down to that, depending on how you look at it.
I gotcha. Yep.
But I say, sure, you have to make up your own mind. Like you said, somebody may listen to it and say, "Who is this Ringo guy? This is great."
Well, and
who knows?
Yeah, and Steve Sanderson, a very loyal viewer of ours, hi Steve, said he wants to see a Bad Boy episode soon. So
I like Bad Boys.
Do that.
One of the most underrated of all albums.
Yeah, there you go.
When we do that episode, I'm going to have a drink in my hand, and I'm going to do the whole show like he does on the cover.
Okay.
That's the way to do it.
Anyway, some great comments here.
Yes.
So, I've always said all the solo Beatle albums have worthwhile material on it.
That's true.
If you really take the time and listen, and don't just listen to an album once or twice, give it several listens, give it a chance, you'll find that there's some songs on every album that you're going to like. And I really do believe that. And it's really hard for me to believe. No, I wouldn't start somebody on Ringo the Fourth of all of his albums. But if you like a lot of what Ringo did in the Beatles, if you like It Don't Come Easy, if you like Oh My, to me, how much of a difference is Simple Love Song or Wings from those songs? It's hard for me to envision people not liking it, not liking those songs, and liking those other songs. So anyway, So why don't we close by giving everybody our contact information and letting everyone know what we're doing?
Mm-hmm.
How about you, Kit? We'll start with you.
Well, you of course can find me at kidotool.com, and my Deep Beatles and Deep Soul columns are coming back soon. I'm also starting a new series for Culture Sonar. Where I'm talking about, it's a series about R&B songs that really helped form the basis of rock and roll. And the first one that'll be published hopefully next month is Rocket 88. I take an in-depth look at that. So yeah, really looking forward to this series. Also, I'm sure many of you have heard there's an Abbey Road conference that's coming up in September, and it's going to be at the Eastman School of Music in Rochester, New York. I'm going to be presenting there. There are going to be a lot of other presenters, and the details for registration just went up, and I'm showing the web address right now. And so go over there. It's like I think it's the 27th through the 29th of September. So go over there. You can register right now, and hope to see you there.
Okay, very good. Joe, how about you?
Well, I have my YouTube channel, Mean Mr. Mayo. You might have heard of a guy, Mean Mr. Mustard. His brother,
No,
Mr. Mayo.
not at all.
You learn something new every day, right? So there you go. And, I do reviews here and there. I talk about different Beatle topics. I also have live chats, which is a lot like what we're doing here now, and people could participate. All you'd have to do is click on the notification, and then you'd know when I'm live. It'll give you a little alert. And we can have discussions like this all over the place. So different solo Beatles topics, and other things, too. If you want to talk about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, we'll talk about that, too. Anything.
Yeah, they're a lot of fun. I love joining in on your live chats.
Me too.
Yeah, I love it.
I've got to start doing that.
Sorry, I keep missing Kits, though. Kit keeps having these live chats.
They're on my Facebook page.
I know.
All right, Tom, how about you?
Well, thank you, Ken. Well, first let's talk about this show, Talk More Talk. As always, you can find us on our email, talkmoresolotalk at gmail.com. We're also on Twitter at TalkMoreTalk1. I believe that's what it is. If you like what you see, we tell other people, let them know to check out our Facebook page, Talk More Talk. Like the page, and then that's when they'll get the information when we'll be live. As Ken said at the beginning of the show, we are a bi-monthly or bi-weekly. Is that how you should say it? Bi-monthly or bi-weekly show. Bi-weekly show. We're here every other Monday. We have a lot of fun doing it, and we love everybody's comments. So please keep them coming. We love to hear from you. And as we did a couple of weeks ago, somebody suggested a show or a topic, and we ran with it. And we'd love to hear other people's suggestions. So
yeah, send your ideas. We really we welcome them.
Keep them coming. For me, for Two Legs, we're on a little summer break right now, but you can email us at twolegspodcast@gmail.com. You can go to Podbean. That's where you'll find our shows. Go to Podbean, type in Two Legs, and you'll find all of our past shows. I will be doing another vinyl corner video, if you want to call it that, probably a couple days after the Linda McCartney Wide Prairie album comes out this Friday. Give it a listen, and we'll talk about all the stuff what a month for July. I mean, we had all this Paul stuff. We had the Ringo Road of McGear come out. We got the McGear, and then now, on Friday we'll have Wide Prairie. So what a great month for vinyl and CD collecting, and just what a great time altogether for all of this Beatle and solo stuff. I mean, it's hurting the wallet, but it's just a great time. I love it very much. So yeah, that's what we got going on. And Ken, back to you.
Yeah, with more releases to come.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sure come early August we'll have the Abbey Road release to talk about too.
Yeah, that's one thing that I think surprises people who are not really big Beatle fans is how much news there really is on a week-by-week basis.
Yeah.
I mean, working with Steve Marinucci, for every day he was posting
Oh.
some kind of news, you know? Yeah.
And let me interrupt real quick. Congratulations on episode 300 of Things We Said Today. I meant to say
Thank
that
you.
earlier, but, you know,
Thank you.
great. What a show. So congratulations.
Thank you. It was a fun show to do, and hopefully
Yeah.
you'll be able to bring back Steve and
yeah,
Al's husband.
Yeah, you inspired David and I to do even longer shows now. So thank you for that.
Uh-oh.
2.5
What have
hours.
I done? That better not happen again. Okay, as for me, let's see here. There are new interviews on my website. Last show I mentioned there's a new one with Lawrence Juber from Wings. He's got a new CD out called Downtown, which you should definitely check out, covering a lot of pop and jazz standards on there. And I also interviewed Michael Hill. Michael was one of John Lennon's childhood friends, and he was with him throughout grade school, through high school. He was, I guess you'd have to say, John's closest friend before Paul, George, and Ringo came along was definitely Pete Shotton. But Michael Hill was one of the others that he was somewhat close to. And Michael tells a story about how he went to Holland and bought the single of Long Tall Sally, Little Richard's Long Tall Sally. And very often during lunchtime breaks at school, John and Pete and Mike Hill and his friend Don would get together for like an hour or so, have lunch, listen to records. And they listened to his record collection, Mike's record collection. According to Mike, Long Tall Sally was a pivotal moment in John's career because he hadn't really thought about wanting to start a band until he heard that record. Even though he heard Elvis Presley and other music before that, this particular record, according to Mike Hill, made his hair stand on end. He couldn't believe how exciting this record was. But it's all the stories about their childhood together. And he put out a book a few years ago, John Lennon, the Boy Who Became a Legend. And there's a new interview that I did with Mike Hill on my website, on the same page with Lawrence Juber, which is interviews page 4. And that's at kenmichaelsradio.com. A lot of stories in there that you never heard before. You know, just like Pete Shotton's book was really great, you know, when it first came out. I haven't read it since then, but there are a lot of great stories in that book about John's childhood.
Is that book going to be part of a special contest?
I'm working on it. I try to work everything into prizes here. Don't you know that? He wants to get a prize out of me.
Oh, I've gotten enough. Don't worry.
So things we said today. We're taking a break. We're going to do a new show next week. I'm on the new episode of When They Was Fab with Ed and Lonnie. We talk about different collaborations the Beatles did in their solo careers together, as well as for other artists, but not actual Beatles recordings. So it could be any solo release like Plastic Ono Band, John and Ringo together, or Imagine, John and George together on the album, stuff like that, plus other artists like Apple recording artists. We do a whole show on that, and that's the newest episode of When They Was Fab. We're checking out. Okay, I think that's everything.
All right, and don't forget to join us at the Fest in just a couple of weeks, August 9th through the 11th, August 10th. Talk More Talk. Ken Womack and I will be there interviewing Mark Lewison. So come on and see us and be part of the show.
Is there a chance that might be our next show?
Yes, that will be our next show. Yep.
Okay,
absolutely.
So like in 2 weeks or so, it'll be up.
That's it.
Wow, I cannot wait to see that.
I said, me too.
I know you are going to be they're going to be asking great questions tomorrow. So.
Yes. Make sure everybody sees your handwriting on the notepad too. So
I certainly will. And maybe we should do a contest, Ken. Like the person who can read my writing will, get something. We could do something like that. And also, I want to mention that this topic we did tonight, this is going to be an occasional series for us. We're going to be looking at albums that have been, not as shall we say, as successful critically or commercially, and reassessing them. So this is the first in an occasional series we're going to be doing. And I see a lot of comments that people really like this. So don't worry, there's more coming.
Okay.
All right.
Very
Can't
good.
wait.
Good.
This has been great. Thanks to everybody
Yep.
watching
Fun
right
show.
now. Tell as many people as you can, Beatle friends, Beatle fans, that you know of about this show, especially those that are into the solo music or want to learn about the solo music. And thanks so much for your support, guys. And thanks to
Yep.
everybody here on this panel. For Tom, Joe, Kit, I'm Ken Michaels saying thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.